If sarcasm were currency, I'd be a billionaire. Too bad it can't buy happiness or a faithful spouse. My name is George Mitchell, and I'm 36 years old with graying temples that make me look distinguished according to my barber, or tired according to my wife. I work as a financial advisor in downtown Cleveland, helping middle-class families plan for retirement they'll probably never afford. It's honest work, boring work, the kind that pays the mortgage on our colonial in Lakewood and keeps Claire in designer handbags. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Claire, my wife of 8 years, a PR specialist with ambitions bigger than our bank account and a smile that could sell ice to Eskimos. She's beautiful in that polished, Instagram-ready way that requires 2 hours of preparation before leaving the house. Lately, she's been spending more time on that preparation and less time talking to me. We need to discuss something, she announced last Tuesday over dinner. She'd made salmon, which should have been my first warning. Claire only cooks when she wants something. Shoot, I said, cutting into the fish that was somehow both overcooked and undercooked simultaneously. I think we should open our marriage. I nearly choked on a piece of salmon. Come again? An open marriage, George. We're both adults. We have needs, physical and emotional needs that maybe one person can't fulfill entirely. The way she said it, so clinical and rehearsed, told me this wasn't a spontaneous idea. This was a presentation she'd been practicing. Whose needs aren't being fulfilled exactly? I asked. She sighed, the kind of theatrical sigh she usually reserved for dealing with difficult clients. This isn't about blame. It's about growth. About exploring ourselves as individuals while maintaining our partnership. Partnership, like we were a law firm. And you've already given this considerable thought, I assume? I've drafted some guidelines, just to keep things civilized. Guidelines. Of course she had. Claire approached everything like a business proposal. She pulled out her phone and began reading from what I later learned was a carefully crafted document she'd spent weeks perfecting. Rule 1. Complete honesty about outside relationships. Rule 2. Safe practices always, no exceptions. Rule 3. No overnight stays without prior notification. Rule 4. Our marriage remains the priority. Rule 5. Either party can revoke consent to this arrangement at any time. I stared at her, fork suspended halfway to my mouth. You want me to sign a contract to let you sleep with other people? To let us both sleep with other people, she corrected. This isn't one-sided, George. But we both knew it was. Claire had always been the social one, the charming one, the one who could walk into a room and own it within minutes. I was the guy who made spreadsheets and worried about tax implications. I need time to think about this, I said. Of course, take all the time you need. The next morning, I found a printed copy of her open marriage agreement on my nightstand, complete with signature lines and a notary seal. She'd already signed it. I called my brother Daniel that afternoon. She wants to what now? He asked. I could hear power tools in the background. Daniel owns a construction company and has the kind of straightforward approach to problems that involves either fixing them or tearing them down. Open marriage, with rules and everything. Jesus, George, what are you going to do? I don't know. Maybe it could work. Maybe we just need... Brother, let me stop you right there. This isn't about what you need. This is about what she wants. And what she wants is permission to cheat without consequences. But I signed it anyway. 3 days later, with Claire watching expectantly over my shoulder, I put my name on that document and handed her the permission slip for my own humiliation. Thank you, she said, kissing my cheek. This is going to be so good for us. The first time she used her newfound freedom was the following Friday. She came home at 2 a.m., showered immediately, and slept on the couch, claiming she didn't want to wake me. The smell of unfamiliar cologne lingered in the bathroom for hours. His name was Oliver Brennan, and he drove a silver BMW that started appearing in our driveway with increasing frequency. Oliver worked in advertising, wore expensive suits, and had the kind of confident swagger that suggested he'd never been rejected by anything in his life. "He's helping me with the Morrison account," Claire explained when I asked about him over breakfast. "You know how important this client is for my career." "The Morrison account." "Right. Because all business meetings required him to stay until midnight and leave his car in our driveway where the neighbors could see. Maya Henderson from next door mentioned it at the mailbox one Thursday morning. Maya was the neighborhood's unofficial gossip coordinator, a woman who could extract secrets from a CIA operative given enough coffee and time. "That's a beautiful car your wife's friend drives," she said, sorting through catalogs and bills. "BMW, right? Must be doing well for himself." "Must be," I agreed. "Handsome, too, very European-looking. Sophisticated." Maya had a way of making observations that weren't quite questions, but demanded responses anyway. "Claire's working on a big project with him," I said. "Oh, I'm sure she is." Maya's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Jules and I were just saying how dedicated Claire is to her work. Out so late, working so hard. You're lucky to have such an ambitious wife. Jules was Maya's partner in neighborhood surveillance, a retired teacher who spent her days monitoring the street from her kitchen window. "Very lucky," I said, closing my mailbox with more force than necessary. That weekend, Claire attended what she called a strategy session at Oliver's apartment. She left Saturday afternoon and returned Sunday morning wearing the same clothes, but somehow looking entirely different. There was a glow about her, a satisfaction that I hadn't seen in months. "How did the strategy session go?" I asked. "Productive," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Very productive." I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. The way she guarded her phone, angling it away from me when texting. The new lingerie that appeared in her drawer, tags still attached, in styles she'd never worn for me. The sudden interest in working out, specifically at the gym where Oliver was a member. My job requires attention to detail, the ability to spot irregularities in financial patterns. People think numbers don't lie, but they're wrong. Numbers can be manipulated, hidden, rearranged to tell whatever story you want. The trick is knowing what to look for. Claire's credit card statements told a story of expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together, charges at hotels during her lunch meetings, purchases at Victoria's Secret that never made it into our bedroom. I created a spreadsheet. It's what I do when life gets overwhelming. I organize it into columns and rows until it makes sense. Date, time, location, expense, explanation given. The pattern emerged quickly. Every Tuesday and Friday, sometimes Sundays, always when I was either at work or visiting my mother. "You're being paranoid," Claire said when I mentioned the hotel charges. "That's where we met the Morrison clients. You know how important this account is." The Morrison account had become her explanation for everything. Late nights, weekend meetings, mysterious phone calls she took in the other room. If I didn't know better, I'd think the Morrison account was the most demanding client in PR history. But I was starting to know better. The West Side Bar and Grill wasn't the kind of place I'd normally choose for dinner, but Claire insisted we meet her colleagues there for what she called team building. It was one of those trendy spots with exposed brick walls, craft cocktails that cost more than my lunch, and lighting dim enough to hide a multitude of sins. I arrived first, claiming a table near the back where I could observe without being obvious about it. Claire showed up 20 minutes later with her usual entourage. Maya from the neighborhood, Jules the retired teacher, and Trent Morrison, who I was beginning to suspect was less a client and more an enabler. "George," Claire's voice carried across the restaurant as she approached our table. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, black and form-fitting, the kind that announced its wearer's availability to anyone paying attention. "You remember everyone." I stood to greet them, playing the role of supportive husband while mentally cataloging the looks that passed between Claire and Trent. There was a familiarity there, an intimacy that went beyond professional relationships. "Where's Oliver tonight?" I asked casually as we settled into our seats. "Working late?" Claire replied without missing a beat. "You know how dedicated he is." Maya and Jules exchanged a glance that lasted just long enough to be meaningful. "Such a hard worker," Maya agreed. "Jules and I were just commenting on how often his car is in your driveway. Very dedicated." The server appeared before Claire could respond, a young woman with multiple piercings who took our drink orders with the enthusiasm of someone counting down the minutes until her shift ended. "So, George." Trent leaned forward, his cologne overwhelming the scent of whatever artisanal candles the restaurant was burning. "Claire tells me you're in finance. Must be interesting, all those numbers." "Fascinating," I replied. "You'd be amazed what numbers can tell you about a person's priorities." Claire's laugh was too loud, too forced. "George loves his spreadsheets. He tracks everything." "Everything?" Jules asked, her teacher's instincts sensing an undercurrent of tension. "Household expenses, investments, patterns of behavior," I said, meeting Claire's eyes across the table. "You'd be surprised how revealing a good analysis can be." The conversation moved on to safer topics: the weather, local politics, Maya's ongoing feud with the postal service. But I noticed how often Claire checked her phone, how her fingers drummed against the table when she thought no one was looking. Halfway through dinner, Oliver appeared. He made an entrance, that's the only way to describe it. The kind of arrival that draws attention without seeming to try. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the confidence of a man who'd never been told no about anything that mattered to him. "Sorry I'm late," he announced, sliding into the empty chair next to Claire. "Got held up at the office." His hand found her shoulder as he sat down, a casual touch that lingered just long enough to establish ownership. Claire leaned into the contact like a flower turning towards sunlight. "Oliver, you remember my husband, George," Claire said. "Of course." Oliver extended his hand across the table. His grip was firm, practiced, the handshake of someone who'd learned to establish dominance in the first 3 seconds of any interaction. "Claire talks about you all the time." "Does she?" I replied, maintaining eye contact. "Funny, she rarely mentions you at home." The silence that followed was the kind that makes servers avoid your table and other diners glance over to see if they should call for help. "Well," Maya said brightly, "isn't this nice? All of us together like this." Oliver had positioned himself so that his knee touched Claire's under the table. I could see the point of contact, the way she shifted slightly to maintain the pressure. They thought they were being subtle. "How's the Morrison account progressing?" I asked. "Wonderfully," Oliver replied. "Claire's been incredibly hands-on with the project, very dedicated to getting the details right." Trent snorted into his drink, earning a sharp look from Jules. "The client is very satisfied with our approach," Claire added. "We've been putting in a lot of late nights, really diving deep into the work." "I bet you have," I said. The evening continued like a carefully choreographed dance, with Oliver and Claire performing their roles as professional colleagues while broadcasting their relationship to anyone with functioning eyes. They shared appetizers, finished each other's sentences, and maintained the kind of sustained eye contact that belongs in bedrooms, not business dinners. Maya was taking notes, I realized. Not literally, but she was cataloging every interaction, every meaningful glance, every casual touch. By tomorrow morning, half the neighborhood would know that Claire Mitchell was putting on quite a show at the West Side Bar and Grill. "I should probably head home," I announced, as the server brought dessert menus. "Early morning tomorrow." "Of course, honey," Claire said, not looking at me. "I'll catch a ride with Maya." But we all knew she wouldn't be riding with Maya. I paid the check, said my goodbyes, and walked out into the cool October evening. Through the restaurant's large windows, I could see our table. Oliver had moved into my vacated seat, sitting closer to Claire now, his hand resting on her thigh. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "How's the fancy dinner going?" "Educational," I replied. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching through the window as Claire and Oliver performed their mating ritual for an audience of neighborhood gossips and enablers. When they finally left together, walking toward his BMW with their arms around each other, I followed at a distance. They drove to the Marriott downtown, the same hotel that had been appearing on Claire's credit card statements. Oliver handed his keys to the valet like he owned the place, and they walked into the lobby with the casual familiarity of people who'd done this before. I drove home to our empty house, poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey, and sat at my kitchen table staring at the open marriage agreement Claire had so carefully crafted. Rule 1. Complete honesty about outside relationships. Rule 4. Our marriage remains the priority. Rule 5. Either party can revoke consent to this arrangement at any time. I pulled out my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. This one wasn't about household expenses or investment portfolios. This one was about evidence, patterns, and the systematic documentation of my wife's lies. If Claire wanted to play games with rules, I'd show her what happened when someone who understood systems decided to play along. Sunday morning arrived with the sound of Oliver's BMW pulling into our driveway at 6:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I'd been awake since 5, sitting at my kitchen window with coffee, and a growing sense that my marriage was becoming a neighborhood spectacle. Claire slipped through the front door like a teenager sneaking in past curfew, her heels in her hand and yesterday's dress wrinkled beyond redemption. She froze when she saw me at the kitchen table. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep. How was your evening with Maya?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable for about 3 seconds before her PR training kicked in. "We ended up going to Trent's place after dinner. Lost track of time." "All of you? Maya, Jules, Trent, and Oliver?" "Yes, all of us. Just talking about the Morrison project." I nodded, taking a sip of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. "Must have been quite a brainstorming session. Very intensive. You know how these things go when creative people get together." Creative. That was one word for it. Claire disappeared upstairs for another immediate shower, her second in 12 hours. The smell of Oliver's cologne lingered in our entryway like an unwelcome guest who didn't know when to leave. I spent Sunday organizing my evidence. Bank statements, credit card records, phone bills, and a detailed timeline of Claire's movements over the past 6 weeks. The pattern was clear to anyone who cared to look. My wife was conducting a full-scale affair under the flimsy cover of an open marriage agreement. Monday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was reviewing client portfolios when my secretary, Mrs. Patterson, announced that someone was here to see me. "Jessica Brennan," the woman said, extending her hand as she entered my office. "Oliver's wife." She was nothing like I'd expected. Where Oliver was all flash and surface charm, Jessica was quietly elegant, the kind of woman who didn't need to announce her presence because her competence did it for her. She wore a simple gray suit and carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd earned her place in the world. "I think we need to talk," she said. "About what?" "About our respective spouses and their very obvious affair." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Can I offer you some coffee?" "That would be nice." Mrs. Patterson brought coffee while Jessica arranged a manila folder on her lap with the precision of someone accustomed to presenting evidence. "I hired a private investigator 6 weeks ago," she said without preamble. "Oliver's been cheating for years, but this time feels different, more serious." She opened the folder and spread photographs across my desk. Oliver and Claire entering the Marriott. Oliver and Claire at restaurants I'd never been to. Oliver and Claire in what appeared to be a very intimate conversation at a coffee shop downtown. "Your wife is beautiful," Jessica said. "I can see why Oliver is so taken with her." "How long have you known?" "About Claire specifically? Since the night they met at that PR conference in September?" "About Oliver's affairs in general?" 3 years. Why haven't you divorced him? Jessica smiled, and for the first time since entering my office, she looked genuinely amused. Because Oliver is very good at making money, and I'm very good at managing it. We have an understanding. But this time is different? This time he's talking about leaving me, about starting fresh with someone who shares his vision for the future. She gathered the photographs and returned them to the folder. I don't particularly care about Oliver's sexual adventures, but I care very much about my financial security. I leaned back in my chair, studying this woman who spoke about her husband's infidelity with the detachment of someone discussing quarterly earnings. What do you want from me? Information, cooperation. Your wife signed an open marriage agreement, correct? How did you... Oliver showed it to me. He was quite proud of how Claire had handled what he called the husband problem. He found it amusing that you'd essentially given him written permission to sleep with your wife. The casual cruelty of that statement hit harder than I'd expected. I'd been thinking of myself as a victim of Claire's deception, but to Oliver, I was just a joke, the cuckold who'd signed his own humiliation. I assume you have copies of this agreement? Jessica continued. Of course. Good, because that document is going to be very useful when Oliver tries to claim this was just a casual fling. It establishes premeditation, planning, and your wife's active participation in deceiving both of us. We spent the next hour comparing notes, literally. Jessica had credit card statements, hotel receipts, and a detailed log of Oliver's movements. I had Claire's financial records, her revised work schedule, and a growing collection of lies she'd told to cover her tracks. They're planning a weekend trip, Jessica said, as she prepared to leave. Niagara Falls, apparently. Oliver thinks it's romantic. When? Next weekend. He told me it was a business conference in Buffalo. Claire mentioned a PR retreat in Rochester. How convenient that they're both such dedicated professionals. After Jessica left, I sat in my office staring at the photographs she'd shared. There was something about seeing the evidence in black and white that made it real in a way that my suspicions hadn't been. These weren't just my paranoid imaginings or misinterpreted signals. My wife was having an affair, flaunting it in front of our neighbors and using an agreement I'd signed to provide legal cover for her betrayal. I called my brother Daniel. You sound different, he said after I'd explained about Jessica's visit. Different how? I don't know. Calmer, maybe? Like you've made a decision. Maybe I have. What kind of decision? I looked at the photographs spread across my desk, at the timeline I'd created, at the carefully documented evidence of my wife's systematic deception. The kind that involves spreadsheets, I said. Jesus, George. When you get analytical, people should run for cover. Maybe they should. That evening, Claire announced she'd be attending a professional development retreat in Rochester the following weekend. She delivered this news while checking her phone, not bothering to make eye contact. That's wonderful, I said. Professional development is so important in your field. Exactly. It's crucial to stay current with industry trends. I'm sure you'll learn a lot. I plan to. She went upstairs to pack, humming softly to herself. Through our bedroom window, I could see Maya Henderson working in her garden, but her attention was clearly focused on our house. The neighborhood surveillance network was always operational. I opened my laptop and began researching Niagara Falls hotels. If Claire and Oliver wanted to have a romantic weekend getaway, the least I could do was make sure they had appropriate accommodations. After all, I was nothing if not a supportive husband. Friday evening, Claire left for her professional development retreat with 2 suitcases and the kind of excitement she usually reserved for Christmas morning. She'd spent the week shopping for new clothes, getting her hair done, and humming songs I didn't recognize. I'll miss you, she said, kissing my cheek with lips that tasted like the expensive lipstick she only wore for special occasions. I'll miss you too. Learn lots at your retreat. Oh, I intend to learn quite a lot. I watched from our front window as Oliver picked her up in his BMW. He didn't bother getting out of the car, just honked twice like she was a college student heading to spring break. Maya Henderson was watering her flowers, but her attention was entirely focused on the scene in our driveway. As soon as they drove away, I put my own plan into motion. Jessica had provided me with the name of their hotel, the Marriott Fallsview, with a reservation under Oliver's name for the honeymoon suite. She'd also given me the private investigator's contact information and a detailed schedule of Oliver's weekend plans. I called the hotel. "Marriott Fallsview, this is Sandra. How can I help you?" "Hi, Sandra. I'm calling about a reservation under the name Brennan. I need to make some special arrangements for my friends who are celebrating their anniversary." "Of course, sir. How can we help make their stay special?" "Well, they're both married to other people, so this is a very discreet celebration. I'd like to arrange for some champagne and flowers to be delivered to their room, but I want to make sure it's handled properly." There was a pause. "I'm sorry, sir. Did you say they're married to other people?" "Yes, it's quite romantic, actually. They're both leaving their spouses to be together. Very passionate love story." "I see. And you want to send champagne?" "Champagne, flowers, and I'd like to arrange for some photographs of their special weekend." "Do you have a photographer on staff?" "Sir, I'm not sure we can—" "Oh, it's fine. Their spouses both know about the relationship. Very modern arrangement. In fact, I'll be sending copies of the photos to both families. Everyone's very supportive." I hung up before Sandra could respond, confident that the hotel staff would now be paying special attention to the couple in the honeymoon suite. Next, I called Oliver's office. "Brennan and Associates, this is Michelle." "Hi, Michelle. This is George Mitchell. I'm trying to reach Oliver about the Morrison account." "I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell, but Mr. Brennan is at a conference in Buffalo this weekend." "Oh, that's strange. I just saw him heading toward the highway with my wife. They looked like they were going on vacation." Another pause. "Your wife?" "Yes, Claire Mitchell. She works in PR. Tall, blonde, very attractive. They've been working together on the Morrison account. Very closely, if you know what I mean." I'm not sure I understand." "Oh, it's fine. We have an open marriage. I just wanted to confirm some details about their business trip. Or pleasure trip. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference with those two." I hung up, knowing that Michelle would spend the weekend wondering what kind of business conference required her boss to travel with another man's wife to a romantic destination. But I wasn't done. I drove to Oliver's neighborhood, a upscale development where the houses were large and the secrets were carefully hidden behind manicured lawns. I found his address and knocked on the door of his next-door neighbor. "Hi there," I said to the elderly man who answered. "I'm George Mitchell. I think my wife might be having an affair with your neighbor Oliver." The man's eyes widened. "Excuse me?" "Oliver Brennan, right next door. Drives the silver BMW. He's been sleeping with my wife for about 2 months now. They went to Niagara Falls together this weekend." Are you sure about this?" "Oh, absolutely. We have an open marriage, so it's technically allowed, but I thought you should know in case you see strange cars in his driveway or hear unusual noises. My wife can be quite enthusiastic." I handed him my business card. "If you see anything interesting while they're gone, would you mind giving me a call? I'm documenting everything for our eventual divorce." I repeated this conversation with 3 more neighbors, each time presenting myself as the wronged but understanding husband who just wanted to keep everyone informed about the situation. By the time I finished my rounds, Oliver's entire neighborhood knew that he was conducting an affair with a married woman whose husband was apparently collecting evidence for legal proceedings. Saturday morning, I received a call from Jessica. "What exactly did you do yesterday?" she asked. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Oliver called me at 6 this morning, screaming about hotel staff asking inappropriate questions and his office receiving strange phone calls. He seems to think someone is sabotaging his romantic weekend." How terrible for him. "George, I can hear the satisfaction in your voice. Can you? I must be coming down with something." "He wants to come home early. Says the whole trip has been ruined by suspicious hotel employees and intrusive questions about his personal life. What a shame. I hope Claire isn't too disappointed. Oh, she's furious, according to Oliver. Apparently, she's blaming him for not planning properly. I spent Saturday afternoon preparing for their return. I'd learned from Jessica's private investigator that they were driving back Sunday evening, which gave me time to arrange one final surprise. I called Maya Henderson. Maya, it's George from next door. Oh, hello, George. How are you handling Claire's business trip? Actually, that's why I'm calling. It turns out it wasn't exactly a business trip. Oh? Claire and Oliver went to Niagara Falls together. Romantic getaway. I thought you should know since you've been so observant about his car being in our driveway. The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. Maya, are you there? Yes, I'm here. Did you say Niagara Falls? Honeymoon suite at the Marriott Falls View. Oliver told his wife it was a business conference in Buffalo, and Claire told me it was a PR retreat in Rochester. Oh my. I know it's awkward, but I thought you and Jules should be aware, especially since they'll probably want to keep it quiet when they get back. Of course, we wouldn't want to make things uncomfortable. I appreciate your discretion, Maya. By Sunday afternoon, I estimated that approximately 30 people knew about Claire and Oliver's romantic weekend getaway. Hotel staff, office colleagues, neighbors, and the entire informal network of gossips that keeps suburban communities informed about each other's business. When Claire's text arrived at 4 p.m. saying they were heading home early because of conference scheduling issues, I was ready. I sat in my living room with a glass of wine and my laptop, watching through the window as Maya Henderson positioned herself in her front yard with a watering can and the predatory patience of a nature documentary filmmaker. At 6:23 p.m., Oliver's BMW pulled into our driveway. Even from inside my house, I could see the tension between them. Claire got out of the car without saying goodbye, grabbed her suitcases from the trunk with sharp, angry movements, and slammed the car door hard enough to make Maya jump. Oliver drove away without his usual confident swagger, and Claire stormed into our house like a thunderstorm, looking for something to destroy. How was the retreat? I asked, as she dropped her suitcases in the entryway. Terrible. Completely disorganized. Waste of time. That's a shame. You seemed so excited about it. She looked at me sharply, searching my face for signs of suspicion or knowledge, but I just smiled the same pleasant, supportive smile I'd been wearing for 8 years of marriage. I'm going to take a shower, she said. Of course, you must be tired from all that professional development. As she headed upstairs, I opened my laptop and began typing. If Claire wanted to play games with rules and agreements, I was ready to show her what happened when someone who understood systems decided to change the rules of engagement. The real game was just beginning. Monday morning brought consequences in the form of a phone call from Claire's boss, Patricia Hendricks, a woman whose voice could cut glass and whose patience had apparently reached its limit. George, I need to speak with Claire immediately, she said when I answered the phone. She's already left for work. Is everything all right? No, everything is not all right. I've been receiving very disturbing phone calls about Claire's professional conduct. I feigned concern. What kind of phone calls? The kind that suggest she's been using company resources to conduct personal relationships. The kind that mention romantic getaways disguised as business trips. Oh my, that does sound serious. Is there something I should know about Claire's recent travel? I paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to suggest reluctance to discuss private matters. Patricia, I don't like to involve myself in Claire's professional affairs, but since you asked directly, she did spend the weekend at Niagara Falls with a colleague, Oliver Brennan from the advertising firm. Niagara Falls. Yes. The Marriott Falls View, honeymoon suite. She told me it was a PR retreat in Rochester, but I've learned that Oliver told his wife it was a business conference in Buffalo. Jesus Christ. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Claire and I have an understanding about these things. An understanding? We have what you might call an open marriage. Claire is free to pursue other relationships as long as she's honest about them. And was she honest about this trip? Well, not exactly, but I'm sure she had her reasons. Patricia hung up without saying goodbye, which I took as a sign that Claire's Monday was about to become very interesting. I arrived at my office to find Jessica Brennan waiting in the lobby with 2 cups of coffee and a folder that looked significantly thicker than the one she'd brought to our first meeting. "Good morning," she said. "I thought you might want to see how your weekend sabotage played out." We went to my office, where she spread out a collection of photographs, hotel receipts, and what appeared to be a transcript of some kind. "Oliver came home yesterday in a rage," she said. "Apparently their romantic weekend was ruined by a series of unfortunate coincidences." "What kind of coincidences?" "Hotel staff asking intrusive questions about their relationship status, his office receiving calls about his travel arrangements, neighbors inquiring about his weekend plans." She handed me a photograph showing Oliver and Claire in what appeared to be a heated argument in the hotel lobby. They fought for most of Saturday night. Claire accused Oliver of being careless with their secret. Oliver accused Claire of telling people about their relationship. "How do you know all this?" "The private investigator I hired has been very thorough. Oliver made several phone calls from the hotel, all of which were recorded." She handed me the transcript. It was a conversation between Oliver and someone named Sam, apparently a friend who served as Oliver's confidant in matters of infidelity. "Read the highlighted section," Jessica said. I found the relevant passage. "Someone knows about Claire and me, and they're systematically destroying our weekend. The hotel staff keeps asking weird questions. My office thinks I'm lying about where I am, and Claire is acting like it's my fault that our secret got out." "Interesting," I said. "It gets better. Keep reading. Claire's husband signed some kind of open marriage thing, so I thought we were in the clear. But now I'm wondering if he's playing some kind of game. The guy's a financial advisor, right? These numbers people are sneaky as hell when they want to be." I looked up at Jessica, who was smiling with the satisfaction of someone whose chess opponent had just walked into checkmate. "Oliver is starting to suspect you're not as naive as you appear," she said. "Good. I was getting tired of being underestimated. There's more. Claire called in sick to work this morning, but her boss had already received several anonymous tips about her weekend activities." "Anonymous tips?" "Someone called her office and suggested they might want to investigate whether company resources were being used for personal travel. Someone also mentioned that Claire had been conducting an affair with a client's representative, which could be seen as a conflict of interest." "How terrible." "Patricia Hendricks is conducting a full review of Claire's recent expense reports and travel claims. She's also questioning the legitimacy of the Morrison account, since several people have suggested that Trent Morrison might be more friend than client." I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. My small acts of sabotage had created a cascade of consequences that was rapidly spinning beyond anyone's control. "What about Oliver?" "Oliver's partners at the advertising firm are asking questions about his relationship with PR companies. Apparently, someone suggested that his involvement with Claire might represent a conflict of interest, since he's been recommending her services to clients while conducting a personal relationship. Someone has been very busy making phone calls." "Someone has indeed." Jessica gathered her papers and returned them to the folder. "Oliver wants to end things with Claire," she said. "He's convinced that continuing the relationship will destroy both their careers." "And Claire?" "According to the private investigator, Claire spent yesterday evening driving around the city making phone calls. She seems to think someone is deliberately sabotaging her relationship." "Any idea who she suspects?" "You, actually. She told Oliver that you've been acting strange lately, asking too many questions, paying too much attention to her schedule. Imagine that. She wants to confront you tonight. Oliver advised against it, but Claire apparently doesn't like being outmaneuvered. I spent the rest of the day preparing for Claire's confrontation. I organized my evidence, made copies of all relevant documents, and arranged for Daniel to be available if I needed backup. Claire arrived home at 6 p.m. with the kind of focused anger that suggested she'd been rehearsing her arguments all day. "We need to talk," she announced, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter with enough force to rattle the windows. "Of course. How was your day?" "Don't play games with me, George. I know what you've been doing." "I'm not sure what you mean." "The phone calls, the questions, the sabotage." I poured myself a glass of wine and offered her one, which she declined with a sharp shake of her head. "I think you might be a little paranoid," I said. "Maybe the stress of managing multiple relationships is getting to you." "Multiple relationships?" "You, Oliver, Trent, whoever else you've been seeing. It must be exhausting keeping all those lies straight." Her face went pale, then flushed red. "You bastard. Actually, I'm the husband. The one who signed your open marriage agreement, remember? The one who gave you permission to sleep with whoever you wanted as long as you followed the rules." "I did follow the rules. Which rule covers lying about business trips? Which rule allows you to use company resources for personal travel? Which rule says you can humiliate me in front of the entire neighborhood?" Claire stared at me, and for the first time since this whole mess began, she seemed to realize that she might have underestimated the man she'd been married to for 8 years. "You did this," she said quietly. "You destroyed my weekend with Oliver." "I didn't destroy anything. I just made sure people knew the truth about what you were doing." "You had no right." "I had every right. I'm your husband, remember? The man you promised to love and honor and cherish. The man you've been lying to for months while conducting an affair with a married man. We have an agreement. We have an agreement that you violated repeatedly. Rule 1, complete honesty about outside relationships. You've been lying since day 1. Rule 4, our marriage remains the priority. When was the last time you prioritized our marriage over your affair with Oliver?" Claire sat down at the kitchen table, her anger deflating into something that looked almost like defeat. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to realize that the man you married isn't as stupid or as passive as you thought. And then what? Then we'll see what happens next." I finished my wine and headed upstairs, leaving Claire sitting at the kitchen table with the ruins of her carefully constructed deception scattered around her like broken glass. The real reckoning was still to come. Tuesday morning arrived with the sound of Claire's phone ringing continuously starting at 6 a.m. She answered each call with increasing desperation, her voice carrying through our thin bedroom walls like a soundtrack to disaster. "Patricia, please, let me explain. No, I understand your position, but yes, I realize how this looks." I showered and dressed while she pleaded with her boss, her colleagues, and apparently several clients who had received anonymous information about her recent professional conduct. "George," she called as I headed downstairs for breakfast. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." She appeared in the kitchen wearing yesterday's clothes, her hair uncombed and her makeup smeared. She looked like someone who'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, contemplating the ruins of her carefully constructed life. "I've been suspended pending an investigation into my expense reports and client relationships." "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. You did this." "I documented your lies and made sure the right people had access to accurate information about your activities. What they chose to do with that information was their decision." Claire poured herself coffee with shaking hands. "Oliver won't take my calls." Smart man. His wife knows everything, about us, about the weekend, about the hotel receipts. Jessica is very thorough when she wants to be. Claire's head snapped up. "You know Jessica?" "We've met. Interesting woman. Very practical approach to marriage and infidelity." "You've been working with Oliver's wife?" "I've been working with someone who shares my interest in documenting the truth about our respective spouses' behavior." Claire sat down heavily at the kitchen table, her coffee cup cradled in her hands like a lifeline. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "I want you to understand what you've done. To me, to our marriage, to your career, to Oliver's marriage. I want you to see the full scope of the damage your lies have caused. And then you're going to fix it. How?" I pulled out my laptop and opened the spreadsheet I'd been working on for the past month. Dates, times, locations, expenses, lies told, people deceived. A complete accounting of Claire's affair presented in the kind of detail that would make an IRS auditor proud. "You're going to call Maya Henderson and invite her over for coffee," I said. "You're going to tell her the truth about your relationship with Oliver, about the lies you told, about the weekend trip you took while claiming to be at a business conference." "I can't do that. Maya will tell everyone." "Maya will tell everyone anyway. She's been collecting gossip about your affair for weeks. The only question is whether she hears the truth from you or continues spreading speculation and rumors." Claire stared at the spreadsheet, her face growing paler as she absorbed the scope of my documentation. "You're going to call your mother and explain why you've been suspended from work. You're going to call Patricia and admit that you've been using company resources for personal travel. You're going to call Oliver and tell him that your affair is over." "And if I don't?" I turned the laptop screen toward her, showing her a folder labeled Divorce Proceedings. "Then I file these documents with my attorney tomorrow morning, along with copies of your open marriage agreement, evidence of your systematic deception, and a detailed accounting of your financial infidelity." "Financial infidelity?" "Using marital assets to conduct an affair. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts, travel expenses. All paid for with money from our joint accounts, while lying to me about the purpose of those expenditures." Claire scrolled through the spreadsheet, her eyes widening as she saw the scope of my investigation. "You've been planning this for weeks." "I've been documenting your lies for weeks. The planning started when you decided to treat our marriage like a business contract you could manipulate for your own benefit." My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "How's it going?" "Almost finished," I replied. Claire looked up from the laptop. "What happens after I make these calls?" "That depends on you. We can try to rebuild our marriage based on honesty and mutual respect, or we can end it cleanly with full disclosure of why it failed." "And Oliver?" "Oliver is Jessica's problem now. I suspect she has her own plans for dealing with a husband who's been conducting affairs for years while thinking he was too clever to get caught." Claire stood up and walked to the window, staring out at Maya Henderson's house, where our neighbor was already positioned in her front garden with a watering can and the alert posture of someone expecting entertainment. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said quietly. "Yes, you did. You planned every step of this affair, from the open marriage agreement to the cover stories to the hotel reservations. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught by someone who pays attention to details." She turned back to me, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married 8 years ago, before the ambition and the lies and the casual cruelty of treating our marriage like a business arrangement. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know you are. The question is whether you're sorry for what you did or sorry that you got caught." Claire picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Maya's number. "Maya, it's Claire. Do you have time for coffee this morning? There's something I need to tell you about Oliver and me." I listened as she arranged the meeting, her voice steady despite the tears running down her face. "One down," I said when she hung up. She made the next call to her mother, then Patricia, then finally Oliver. Each conversation was more difficult than the last, but she got through them all with the kind of professional composure that had made her successful in PR before she decided to use those skills to deceive everyone in her life. When she finished the last call, she sat back down at the kitchen table and looked at me with something that might have been respect. "What now?" she asked. "Now we see if you meant what you said about being sorry. And if I did?" Then we figure out if there's anything left of our marriage worth saving. Claire nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. For what it's worth, she said, I never thought you had it in you to outmaneuver me like this. I know. That was your first mistake. Through the kitchen window, I could see Maya Henderson hurrying toward our front door with the eager anticipation of someone about to receive the gossip of a lifetime. Your audience awaits, I said. Claire stood up, straightened her shoulders, and walked to the front door to face the consequences of her choices. I stayed in the kitchen, listening to her confess everything to Maya's scandalized gasps and pointed questions. When they finished, Maya would call Jules, who would call the other neighbors, who would ensure that everyone in our subdivision knew exactly what had happened and why. By evening, the entire neighborhood would know that Claire Mitchell had conducted a systematic affair, lied to her husband and employer, and been outmaneuvered by the quiet financial advisor she'd apparently thought was too boring to fight back. My phone buzzed with another text from Daniel. Still alive? Better than alive, I replied. I'm winning.